record labels the biggest
Are
scam
you
in
a
hip hop
360?
history?
I don't know.
No, no, don't tell me you don't know. If you don't know, you're in the 360. You're in the 360. It's like one of those.
Okay.
Then tell me what you want from hip hop.
I'm making music, bro. I'm just having fun. You know what I'm saying? My fans
You're gonna
love
have
it.
Yeah,
fun.
having
Just
fun.
having fun in 5 years.
What do you want me to say? You want me to say?
I want you to be aware of your business. I want you
Nah,
to know
you're
whether
being
you're
worked
in a
like a slave there,
360 or
young
not.
or
I want
little
you to
Yachty.
appreciate the culture that changed your life and took you from college dorm rooms, eating oodles and noodles.
Chill.
Damn, dude. Charlamagne going off hard as fuck. Or who is that? Joe Biden? Joe Biden, Joe Budden.
My label, because millions of dollars are missing, and you can tell when millions of dollars are missing.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you before we finish. No, let me ask you, bro.
Yeah.
If somebody owed you $500,000, how would you feel?
Yeah, crazy.
What if they owed you $1 million? What if they owed you $3 million? No, listen. Okay. What if they owed you that, bro?
Right. I understand.
And you showed up for them and you did all these things, right?
Right.
Damn, Big Sean's calling them out.
Now more than ever, hip-hop artists have the power to be the masters of their own destiny. And thanks to the internet and social
I just wanted to pause this real quick. I don't know if you guys have heard or didn't know about this about Frank Ocean. I'm sure you guys know who Frank Ocean is. He's a huge popular singer. But crazy thing about Frank Ocean is he was signed to Def Jam record label, and when he was about to come out with his second album, Blonde, before it was officially released, he came out with the album Endless. Because when he was signed to Def Jam Records, he had a two album record deal. He had to do 2 albums, and then he was done. He could sign another record deal, or he could walk. His first album was Channel Orange, huge popular album, but I'm sure Frank realized that with having a record label, as we will see later on in this video, is such a big scam, because the Def Jam Records probably took a fortune or a good chunk of money from Frank's revenue that they didn't really deserve, because they didn't do anything other than maybe help Frank Ocean get started, maybe provide some, money, some startup fees, some advancements, because that's usually what record labels do. They will give you $500K, $1 million up front, but they're betting on you being able to sell your album when it comes out. They're betting on you, and your album will sell, and they're investing in you basically to get that money back. But when artists don't do that, they end up owing record labels, because they're basically taking out a loan. The artist is taking out a loan, and when their album doesn't fulfill record labels' requirements or what they thought it would, that's bad news bears for the artist. But what Frank Ocean did is, because his first album was so popular and everyone loved Frank Ocean, when his second album came out, he released Endless, and that fulfilled his agreement with Def Jam Records. Then, not less than 24 hours later, Frank is now a free man, independent artist, and he releases another surprise album called Blonde, which ended up being even bigger than his first album and ended up being better. So that in itself is pretty amazing, that Frank Ocean was able to release 2 albums so quickly. And then he basically just finessed Def Jam Records out of $1 million. That is amazing that Frank Ocean was able to do that. I really hope they touch on that in this video, because that is a huge. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but Frank Ocean finessed Def Jam for like $2 million, because Frank Ocean's second album, Blonde, was super popular. Definitely outshined the album Endless that Frank Ocean released just 24 hours earlier, and was basically a giant fuck you to Def Jam. But let's get back.
social media, literally anyone with a drive and determination can reach audiences around the world. Able to make music with an iPhone or computer, this drastic overhaul in both music distribution and the ability to generate a fan base should have meant, theoretically at least, that record labels should have become extinct. Inspired by the success stories of those who refused to sign to a label and do it independently, some believe that the
Chance the Rapper, Chicago native, one of the, he was a big deal, because he didn't sign a record label. He still was doing his own thing, still trying to get big on his own terms, and didn't sign a record label. So that's a big deal. But I wanted to say real quick another thing Birdman is a huge. He's the CEO, founder of or Cash Money Records. You know, they have Lil Wayne. They imprinted, and it sounds so weird when you talk about record labels, but Young Money Records is an imprint of Cash Money Records. So basically, Birdman used to have control over Cash Money Records before Lil Wayne went through that lawsuit with them, trying to get control over Young Money and Young Money's artists, which we all know is Tyga, was probably Tyga. I don't know if he's still part of Young Money, but Nicki Minaj and Drake. Nicki Minaj and Drake are huge stars in itself besides Lil Wayne. So when you take away, or when you have Nicki Minaj and Drake's revenue going not to Lil Wayne, who was basically in charge and is the founder of Young Money, but is going to Birdman because Young Money's imprinted on Cash Money Records. So basically, Young Money is a clone of Cash Money Records, and all the revenue from Young Money goes to Cash Money. But record labels, they're ridiculous. Record labels are nothing but loan sharks. I don't know why people still fall for it. Chance the Rapper is smart for not getting in that with a record label. He didn't fuck around with a record label. I'm surprised he still is not with a record label. Like, there's so many stories we can go down the rabbit hole of record hole shadiness. Like, I don't know if this is true. Maybe I can touch on it later, but there's this huge story of Birdman being shady as fuck, which is probably true. I don't know, but it's a fun read. I always love reading it, so maybe we'll just touch on it later.
Power of record labels must have been crumbling. In fact, disruptive ex-major label head Steve Stout believes that it would only take one flagship artist to take a stand in order for the whole thing to fold in on itself like a house of cards.
If Drake right now posts a link on a picture on the gram of his new album, Lincoln Bio, new album out, fully independent, Drake will make $10 million a week for 60 weeks.
By the way,
you know?
Drake is about to get the biggest bag in the history of the music business by far.
He should.
They don't want that to happen, because the day that happens, you might as well close the business down.
But as empowering as this concept is, the reality is different. Despite the rise in independence and the adoption of new distribution platforms such as Empire and United Masters, 93.3% of hip-hop that made it onto the billboards between the years 2010 and 2018 came from the majors. And in a broader sense, 3 major record labels, Sony, Universal, and Warner, continue to produce 2/3 of all music sold. No matter how many people claim to be going it alone or maintain that they have their own imprint, the majors are signing over 50 artists a month, each.
That's exactly what I was just talking about right now. How Young Money is just an imprint on Cash Money. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Young Money signed. So let's say you're an artist and you sign to Young Money and you sell a million records. That's really good. That's really good for you. That's really good for Young Money. No doubting that. But what really is happening is that $1 million, if your record label is imprint of another label, you're basically just a front for that label. That $1 million is going to go upstream to your parents' record. You're the parent record label. You're a child of another record label. It's crazy. It's really crazy stuff.
Each one of them feeling, for a moment at least, like the most important person in the world until the walls come tumbling down. And as the countless cautionary tales make it all too clear, these companies don't so much sell dreams as they loan them out. Not to mention, when it comes time for them to get what they feel they're owed, the repayments are exceedingly high. Upholding a world in which a famed group such as TLC could have had platinum certified sales and yet still finds themselves so broke that they had to borrow $15,000 for a lawsuit, you'd think that the increased access to information
Damn,
this
that's
time
so
would
rough.
give artists pause before signing the dotted line. But from an artist as famed as Meek Mills claiming that he's never received a dime from MMG to Big
What?
John informing the world that he was signed into a 360 deal that came with just a $15,000 advance, the labels have still managed
15K
to scheme
advancement.
and plot their way into holding on to the status quo that they've created. As for how they do it, well, there's a series of age-old schemes which are
Blueface.
employed to keep both major labels and their seemingly hip-hop-friendly subsidiaries in the driver's seat. For starters, we have the whole concept of a record company advance. Often seen as the first substantial bag that an up-and-coming rapper receives, the advance has become the stuff of hip-hop legend. Defined as a sum of money given by the label to the artist for them to live off of while producing an album, which then has to be paid back from.
See, this is what I was talking about earlier. An advancement, all you're doing is getting a loan from the record label, and that record label is expecting you to pay it back from the sales of the album. If you don't pay it back, you're not going to make money from your album because you're paying back your loan to the record label. It's stupid.
Sales of that album before any royalties can be claimed. The common perception is that they've awarded the funds to you, and from then on, they're at your disposal. Considered to be the budget for your record, it'd be expected that this was yours to do with what you'd like. But in reality, there are ways in which a major will step in and drain your cash reserves, leaving you with little or nothing to show for it by the end of the recording process. Or in the most duplicitous of circumstances, funnel your cash into another artist that's popping at the time. I seen that I was tied to another artist, Waka Flocka Flame said of his time at Warner. Most of my budget money is going to the one that put more money in. They enter, you get hot, we throw the money. If you don't have the record that's buzzing, they don't care, you're flipped. During a recent episode of Off the Record podcast,
That's so rough.
Academics relayed another tale of budget tampering that he'd heard of. This time, he said that the label went out of their way to make the recording experience as expensive as possible for the artists in order to deplete their funds and retain control.
They gave somebody a $2 million recording budget. In a $2 million recording budget, they wanted to book a studio every day for 6 months straight. The
$2 million
manager for the
recording budget. What
artist
is that?
Said, well, if it's $2 million, oh, we finna save some money. We about to take about like 60 to 70,000. We gonna build our own studio. They said the label told them, we won't approve of any place that we don't already pre-select, which means you can't take the budget and go do it a cheaper way. The place they ended up having to basically settle with, it was a mansion in the Hollywood Hills that had a studio in it that they paid $3,500 a day, running through that artist's
That's
budget.
100.
The label and the person who owned the crib, they got
$3,500 a day just to live there. So imagine that. That's $3,500 a day just to sleep in a house with a with a studio in it, because that's the one the record label wants. That's so fucked up. That's coming out of your advancement. That's coming out of your $2 million or your whatever. Maybe getting a $2 million advancement, yeah, you better be like Eminem or Lil Wayne. No one's going to be giving you a $2 million advancement on your first deal. You better be getting something good. They're most likely going to be giving you like 100K or 50K, whatever. Even like Lil Wayne, getting a $1 million on his advancement, that'd be big. Good luck trying to get a bigger advancement.
a relationship.
You're
That's
saying-
almost like money laundering. You're making sure that artist's
That
budget
is money
go
laundering.
to the person you with. You're saying they got a big budget, but you won't give them the budget that they could do what they want.
Giving the illusion of control by dangling a big yet unobtainable number in front of your face.
Who did I just say? Speak of the devil, he shall appear. I just talked about Lil Wayne, and now we have Lil Wayne right here. He is the perfect example of why record labels are nothing but bullshit.
This tactic also bleeds into the underhanded trend of labels flattering their artists with gifts, which, while appreciated, can act as a distraction from what's really going on in the accounting. From Birdman gifting Wayne Bentley Coupes and Rolls Royces in the years prior to Weezy revealing the millions in unpaid earnings that they've withheld from him, to Summer Walker, whose original 2017 deal with Interscope gave her a pitiful 15% royalty rate, being given a G-Wagon by those very same bosses. Labels are happy to give you all the trappings of lavishness on their terms, when in reality, they should simply pay artists adequately and allow them to make whatever purchases or financial decisions they choose. But, as we're learning, the labels will employ any tactic they can to keep things lopsided, even if it means immorally tying young men and women up in legal knots when they've likely never seen a contract before in their lives. Although there are many ways to do this, one that's become particularly prominent in hip-hop is providing artists with the same legal counsel that advises the labels, thus ensuring that at every turn, they'll act in the interests of the massive firm, rather than the young, impressionable creatives. For a contemporary example of this, look no further than Migos' recent high-profile lawsuit against Damian Granderson. Filed in 2020, Migos alleged that Granderson cheated the group out of millions of dollars, accusing him of glaring conflicts of interest, and also accusing him of betraying Migos when he failed to disclose the complete nature of his relationship with Quality Control. DJ Boost Brian Z. Zizuk noted that he was the very same man that negotiated their first ill-fated deal with 300 too. In a deep dive into the situation on the Joe Budden podcast, former co-host Rory Farrell, who previously worked for Sony as a marketing manager, cited the situation as a clear-cut example of how when it comes down to it, Migos' family ties with QC or not, the deck is always stacked against the artists.
I don't care if you have the biggest single on earth. To a lawyer, you are not more of a higher priority than a production company or the label that you are signing to. So when the people
Hopefully
that
didn't
you
have
think
like
are
tons of
managing
reverb or tons of
offer
echo
you
back
the
in that
lawyer
bitch.
to then negotiate with the management company, stop right there.
Yeah,
That's
I don't-
their lawyer.
He might
They
just
will
try to pick
only
up
have
so
your
much
best
extra
interest at
sound.
heart when it profits to the production company or the label.
Far from an isolated incident, this devious tactic of equipping an
Tyga.
artist with a company's lawyer was the same practice that led Tyga to have to pay at least $12 to $15 million to get out of his contract with Cash Money. Intent on keeping artists on the back foot, this is an extreme example of the deck that can mount up when you're on a major. But in the words of academics, this is at the core of how labels keep artists ensnared for years on end.
You have leverage with somebody when they're always in debt, when you're financing their career more than they've made. You know what a label does when an artist you have
That's just
recouped?
fucking rough
they offer
right
you
there.
more money. Oh, so we gave
Brutal.
you $1 million for your first album, and damn, you blew that out of the water. Yo, we'll give you 5 right now. What's up? They're gonna drown you in debt. The label's job is to drown you in debt. Royalty payments, the split on it between the artist and the label is different when the artist is in debt than when the artist has recouped.
Barring the financial red tape that they'll wrap artists up in once you're signed, it's important to remember that sometimes the biggest scam that they can ever perpetrate is getting you in the door in the first place.
That's all record labels really want, is they want you. That's all record labels really want, is they want your money, they want you, because if you don't go without you, a record label wouldn't exist. Like, think about that. If you didn't sign with their label, who's going to be making money for them? Who's going to be making records if you weren't there? No one.
Because in the era of independence, the prestige of a record label is often built on a false narrative which lulls you into thinking that they'll eventually elevate your career, when in reality, they're just segmenting the money that you could have earned. And by the time that they lock you into the dreaded 360, the extent of their control over your earnings can't be undone.
And I've watched them trick people into thinking that after they built their foundation and they have their show and all the exposure is done, that they need them to go to the next level and then have them sell their whole entire behind away.
360 deal, ruthless.
The whole 360 degrees of your ass, pause, away.
On other occasions, as explained by No Limit icon Master P, they'll exploit the naivety of a young artist from poverty, and by signing you early, withhold your true value for decades.
Like, even you look at the guys now, that's probably big right now with social media. I just seen they had NBA YoungBoy. He's the biggest YouTuber, you know, for his
Influence.
music. He did a deal for $2 million for 5 records. So think about that. You got the money up front, but imagine what they get. So we have to teach that to the next generation. Look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at the now. That $1 million look good right now, but what about 10 years from now?
Make no mistake, there are artists who've managed to make the mainstream system work for them. And in the case of 21 Savage, who owns all of his masters, or SZA, who obtained a 70-30 split in her favor between herself and Interscope, there are definitely case studies to be inspired by. But for everyone who thinks that they can tame the beast, you have an NLE Choppa who, after initially turning down a $3 million deal and making a big deal out of his distribution with United Masters, took a joint venture with Warner just months later. Now just one album and mixtape into his deal, he's hoping to rush back to independence after seeing Through the Glass. But if any artist has been relentlessly banging the drum for taking label deals on your terms while keeping one eye on independence at all times, it's Russ. After making his name off his own back, Russ acknowledged that there are reasons to sign during a feature on the Rory and Mal podcast.
If a Universal is prepared to give you 600 grand, that's because they think you're gonna make 2 mil. When you start really seeing the fruits of your labor and labels are willing to offer you these 6-figure deals, $1 million deals, 7-figure deals, it's because you're worth more than that. I jumped ship with Columbia July 2016 because I wanted radio. Apple Music came out in 2015. Even in 2016, streaming was not what it was. I was still looking around the game like, all right, well, I want to be a massive artist. I don't want to be underground. And I'm noticing, well, everyone who's massive has a label. So I'm like, oh, I gotta level the playing field. It wasn't because I needed the money, because I was making at that point 100 grand a month. It wasn't the money. It was, I need to level the playing field because I gotta get access into radio.
That's a very good point. That's one thing that having a record label can get you access to. Having a record label will get you access to radio play, will get you access to clubs. You know, they have that inside network. That's the hardest thing about getting started, is you don't have anyone.
Radio and certain things that I don't have access to. Now, in 2021, if I was an up-and-coming artist making 100 grand a month, would I sign? No.
Independent once again after seeing out his contract, Russ is ready to do it all again, beginning with new EP Chomp 2. And now, he's come back with what he saw as insider information on how to provide funding without ever having to grovel to a major.
Anything you're getting from the label, you can fund it yourself. And honestly, if it's like, well, the label puts up the money to go get radio. Let's say it's 250 grand to like go all the way with it. Well, I don't want to play with my own money. I don't want to play with my own money either. Guess what you can go do? Go get a line of credit. I go get $500,000 from a bank and I use it. I got to now pay monthly. It's still my money at the end of the day, but it's about time value of money. It's about cash flow. It's about peace of mind, right? And it's about going into your pockets. I'll go into the pockets of the bank. So with Chomp 2, I was like, I could fund this. I have millions of dollars in the bank. I could fund it myself. Why? Yo, bank, give me my line of credit. All right, cool. Here's $500,000. Say less.
Self-assured as he is, and this being the antidote to popular artists ever having to tangle with labels, it must be said that this is an oversimplification that leaves many factors out. Considering that studies show that black-owned firms are twice as likely to be rejected for credit than their white counterparts, the model that Russ is putting out there isn't necessarily viable for many of those in the very art form that he, as a white person, has integrated with. And beyond that, it also only applies to those who've already made a fortune, meaning that for many of those who still have hopes of using art to lift themselves out of hardship, going to the
Pretty cool video.